Good evening, everyone, and welcome in to the City Hub postgame show brought to you by Hot Shots. St. Louis's home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com and by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Welcome into Sports Hub STL. And again, this is the City Hub postgame coming in as St. Louis City loses another one, this time a heartbreaker, 2-0 to the dreaded rivals Sporting Kansas City. We got to give them their full name when they beat you 2-0 like that. I'm Matthew Rocchio, joined today by Will Bratton. Will, I know it's a rough night overall, but how you feeling?
Not good. Not feeling good after that one. You never want to watch, the team that you support lose. But you know what? I'll say one thing. The vibes are not as bad as they could be because the St. Louis Blues healed my heart a little bit with their 12th straight win. As I'm sure you guys all heard about on the Blues Hub postgame show shortly before this, but we're not here to talk about anything fun like that. Tonight, we're here to talk about St. Louis City SC falling 0-2 on the road at Children's Mercy Park. You can't even call it Nebraska Furniture Mart when you lose 2-0 like that. So
you got to just give it to them, unfortunately. Yeah, sorry, guys.
You have to. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, one of the things that you're talking about tonight is the lack of goal scoring yet again for St. Louis.
Wait, really? That's what we're going to talk about? Oh, man. Okay, fine. I guess if you want to just take a wildly ridiculous topic.
Yeah.
Give me one reason why we got to talk about the offense, Will.
Oh, well, one reason I could give you a million. The first one that I'm going to go with is
no allowance this time. You can go free. No, you can go freewheeling in today's show. In fact, before we jump into our thoughts, this show is ours. Is not even ours. It is your guys' here on Sports Hub STL. You like the show, you share the show, you comment on the show, and therefore it is your comment more than anything. Michael Bratton got in here early before we went live. We need the City players to spend time with the Blues players to learn how to win. It is an attitude City just doesn't have. I mean, you probably didn't think that when they won 2 in a row, but hey, that's a fair thought from Michael Bratton. Dubes Val says, can't wait to hear Rock and Will rip this team apart. You're going to get plenty of that today, and I think the comments might give you the sucker you need on that side, because here comes Ethan Thornton. When effort can be called into question, it's not acceptable. Will, that's where I'm going to tap you in here because I know you have some thoughts. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to give a little disclaimer here. I do not question the effort of professional athletes because, well, look at me. And I mean, I have a Marvel poster right there. I don't question. I got a Lego set right there. I don't question the effort of professional athletes unless a coach does. And while today they were criticized by their coach, he didn't go as far as questioning their effort. So I will not cross that bridge because I will never do that. But I do think there are some people who are saying that. And so if you want to be a voice to the people on this one, Will, the microphone is yours.
I'll be bold enough to walk across that bridge. I'm not going to sprint across it, but I'm not really going to sit here and say that it's a lack of effort. I'm not going to say that the players weren't trying, but what I will say is that the hunger and the passion and just that like killer go forward and just take what you want mentality is not there. And that's one thing that you do see in the St. Louis Blues right now. But in St. Louis teams have won over the fans for years and years and years in this town with grit, hardworking teams. There's a reason why fans loved Carnell ball in 2023 when it was working, was because it was fast-paced, it was hardworking, it relied on outworking your opponent, not necessarily outskilling them a lot of the time, but forcing them to make mistakes, breaking them down by working harder than them. And what we've seen so far under Olof Mellberg is a style of game that is much slower. It's much more reserved, defensive-minded, and you're not going to necessarily see this balls to the walls, running it down mentality. And so when you see a match like tonight where the passion doesn't really look like it's there, the players' body language is frustrated. They're not like coming out to just, take goals. They're coming out, more so worried and rather than fearless. And those are the things that St. Louis fans, in this town across, all sports are immediately going to get turned off at. And so I'll reason with the people here and say that I don't think it's really an effort thing, but you absolutely have an argument to talk about how frustrating it is with the lack of just that killer instinct on the pitch tonight. And this wasn't just in the attack for me. We watched on that second goal conceded, we watched our entire back line just stand there and watch as Ben Lunt makes one of the best saves in MLS so far this season, pushes it into the bar on a reaction save, only for everyone to stand there and watch as Dejan Jovic slots his second into a wide open net. Ben Lunt never had a chance at that. And that's just unacceptable. Those types of things can't happen. So, Rock, I'm curious what you think kind of about the effort. I know you said you won't dabble in the effort, but what did you think notice with any of the body language or anything like that of the players?
I mean, João Klauss has the worst body language in sports. I mean, that's not a new thing. That's pretty well established. I think to your point, we were talking before we got into the post game about a noticeable change in the overall mindset and output of the players when Akil Watts misses the sitter. I think that's fair. I mean, being kind of like knocked out of the game and being off your game for a little bit, I don't think that's a lack of effort. I think that's just what happens in professional sports when you get, punched in the face or, something like that goes terribly, terribly wrong. And you're just kind of like, if we can't get that to go through, what's going to work for us at this point? So there is a buildup to that. And there's been some comments I've seen on Twitter today where people are talking about how, when you have this much lack of offense, this many games in a row, it builds upon itself. And Tom Timmerman asked Olof Mellberg about that in the post game. And I mean, he didn't really agree with that, but I mean, that's not really something you're going to get most coaches to acquiesce to. That's one of the ones you're just hoping he kind of gives you something to roll on. So I get why people are pushing that, but yeah, the team's frustrated. They've gotten shut out 5 out of 7 games, 3 games in a row. The game before that, their only goal was not an open play; it was from a free kick. So I mean, yeah, they're struggling. They're white knuckling it, and whether you're talking about driving, a car when you're 17, first getting on the highway or whatever, white knuckling's a bad idea. It's not what you want to do. Shit goes wrong. And that's what we've been seeing. Things have been going wrong.
Absolutely. You got to be calm in stressful moments. And that's part of, being a professional and playing at the highest level. So
you got to be calm in the most important moments. You got to be calm in the most important moments. And that's the problem with this team. We've been saying it over and over. Everyone's been complaining about the overall, the build up and the passing and things like that. And again, those things haven't been elite. There's no doubt that while Leuven and Hartel, and I thought Hartel was actually really great tonight, playing a completely different role than we've ever really seen him. They haven't been as dynamic as they were in a previous system. They were also playing on a system that was a front foot system. And so players are going to be more dynamic in a front foot system than what I would call more of a back foot system with what Olof is playing. And you can say, well, that's the entire issue of problem with the thing. But again, have perspective, have a little memory. Remember how much you were complaining about energy drink football back in August, even under Hackworth. I still heard people saying that they were pressing too much and it was still too chaotic. It was still too much like Carnell ball, so on and so forth. So remember what it was like when you were playing a hectic thing, a more front foot offense, and you couldn't defend. Remember what your reactions were then. You cannot eat your cake and have it too. Bottom line, Chat City Tactics, you sarcastic. No, you liar. I think this team is worse without Totland and Leuven. Well, that's the kind of analysis you'll get on Monday.
That is top level analysis.
Sure, just right up there. I mean, Chat City, listen, you're not wrong. I can't criticize you on that one. Yeah, he's screwing around. Obviously, he's having some fun in the chat, and I appreciate that. Have some fun in the chat with Chat City. I think most people, their fun in the chat will be much more negative than CCT's. I'm not putting that one up there. But I think, join us on the chat here on Sports Hub STL. Again, your show as much as it is me and Will's. Where you guys want to take the show, that's where we're going to go. Thomas Welch sometimes joining us on this show. He's joining us now in the chat. Roller coaster of emotions making me sick because he was talking about the Blues tonight, obviously the big win that Will talked about earlier. If you guys are starting this team over, what players are necessary to keep? Well, this
fun question
leads me into tonight, which was the one big silver lining, and I can criticize the fact that he also wasn't great in the final third, specifically in the box. But I mean, it's just, you can't deny that this team's better with Celio Pompeu.
I knew that's where you're going immediately.
There's zero doubt about that. If I'm starting this team over, Celio Pompeu is one of the players that for me would be necessary to keep. He's not the youngest. He's still 25 years old, but this team doesn't have a ton of young players. And he changes this team overall. And I asked Olof Mellberg in the post game about Celio Pompeo, and I want to see if I didn't grab that post that screenshot. My apologies, but what his overall answer was just, we don't have anybody else who has that level of speed and creativity to go one-on-one against players at almost any other position. Obviously, Conrad Vollum had a pretty good game. You would probably argue that relative to other wing backs, he's probably up there the way Celio is with most wings. And so having that level of player and having Olof Mellberg acknowledge how dynamic that is, Celio Pompeo would be one of them, Thomas. But overall, I just think right now, when it can admit that kind of dynamism from the head coach, I tweeted it out. I was joking. I was only half joking. I was being very serious. In fact, I'll completely change my mind. There is zero reason that Celio Pompeo, other than health, that Celio Pompeo is not in the starting lineup for this team, because you can't just say, well, I want to bottle that up for 30 minutes at the end of a game. That is what Simon Becher is here for. I love Simon Becher. He's a great player, but he doesn't have the 1v1 play. And that's why you need to get 60 minutes of Pompeo out there if you ever want this team to score a freaking goal.
And I agree with that. I think Joao Klauss had a good match as the target. I don't think it was his best match, but it definitely was.
He was solid.
He was fine. I'm not going to sit here and complain about
him. People are going to complain about that.
For Pompeo and Wallum.
Yes, but people are going to complain about Klauss because he's a DP and we're just calling him solid. But I think that's another time. That's another conversation for another time. Keep going, Will.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. People will complain the same way people are immediately going to complain about Olof Mellberg 7 games into his coaching career in the MLS. So, it's always, when it's hot, the seat is hot. People are always going to complain. But these are people's, jobs we're talking about here. You can't just call for them to be fired of a few bad performances and things like that.
That's not going to stop anybody.
Your DP, it should be scoring goals, and we've had this conversation a million times. But Klauss did the things that he needed to do tonight to create goal scoring opportunities that should have resulted in goals.
And also,
I can't complain tonight.
I don't want to keep doing this, but the fact of the matter is, you made a decision with him, and you literally haven't been able to change it because you couldn't buy him down because of his transfer fee, and to everyone's point about how bad he is and how much he costs and how he's a designated player, and so he holds back their roster. Why would any team want to trade for him? And to your point, Will, yes, he's overpaid, but when he's on the field, does he make your team better? Yes.
Yes.
And so at this point, until the end of this season, when there's an option on him and you can make a decision and the transfer fee no longer factors into whether or not he's a designated player or not, he makes your team better. And so we can have conversations about how it was a bad transfer with hindsight. But if you're going to always be the person who says, well, let's look at that transfer with hindsight, well, then you're going to be complaining about so many transfers. And I frankly don't really want to talk to you because that's a boring conversation. And you didn't have this information in the front. You didn't know what Lutz knew. And what Lutz knew is that I know this. I've known this guy since he was young, and he's a striker who will press, which pretty much fit the idea of what they want to do right out of the bat. I can't completely blame them with that idea. Creighton Turner says 3rd year, and there's one common problem. We are constantly injured. It's almost like that happens in every sport.
Yeah, in MLS, you don't see it with.
I got this on Twitter too. People just are like, is anyone questioning whether or not the training staff is being questioned about their failures and all these injuries with hamstrings? I'm like, no way. A soccer team has a lot of hamstring injuries. It's almost like they run very long distances and then make sharp turns. Shocking that leg muscles sometimes give out and have issues there. It's almost like when a player almost does the splits while trying to run full speed and he has a groin injury. How did he not avoid that? Clearly, he didn't stretch enough. It's not like he's a professional.
No one even touched him. It's like, oh my God, dude.
It's a ridiculous, in my opinion, it's a ridiculous train to go down unless you can present me with some concrete evidence that City's amount of injuries is so wildly above any amount we've seen over the last 3 to 5 years in the MLS. Because unless you can prove that to me right now, I'm throwing that out as a completely legitimate argument. and you're seizing on 3 years of evidence, which is an incredibly small sample size. We're talking about injuries to the lower bodies of players in the sport of soccer.
Right. And if you want to talk about the staff and the recovery period of our players and sending them back in too soon, that's a different conversation you can have. But in terms of them just getting injured outright, it's a nonsensical conversation. In terms of Matt Z talking about why no Baumgartel, that's definitely a conversation to think about. He went well, in City too. Last weekend played 90, so that's definitely a reason that he wouldn't start this weekend. 6 days of rest after going 90, and at the end of the day, I don't really have a problem with our back line tonight. Obviously, Hebert bit us in the butt with a really bad decision that led to the first goal, and the whole back line decided to just give up on the second goal after it hit the bar. But that was kind of a little bit unlucky, and the first one is just one singular bad decision. Other than that, I can't complain about the back line tonight. Had we scored goals, St. Louis nets, 2 of those grade A chances that they had through the first 60 minutes. Those 2 goals probably wouldn't have happened and wouldn't have mattered, and City would have blown it wide open. So it's hard for me to throw any blame or any complaint on the back line tonight. There can be critiques on individual play for sure, but and I'm sure Rock, I'm sure you would probably agree with that sentiment. But I just I can't spend too much time on the back line tonight for me.
Yeah, that's just sorry. There's a lot going on my Twitter right now, and I want to get as many people into as many different kind of conversations as I possibly can. And somebody's gone on the ownership is cheap run, and they're comparing.
Yeah,
they're comparing San Diego spending $11 million on one player. And correct me if I'm wrong. San Diego plays in Snapdragon Stadium. Is that a state-of-the-art stadium they just built and spent like $200 million of the $400 million total on? Am I confused about the origins of Snapdragon Stadium, or am I correct there?
You're correct. I think that stadium has some sort of dual purpose, though. If I remember,
it is. I'm just screwing around. I think year 5 year 4 and 5 is a completely reasonable time to start complaining about transfer fees. Also, at the same time, if you start selling more players, I know they got the Nico money. They got a little money in GAM, and I know that now allowing cash trades probably, I think, maybe matches a runway. Listen, I'll be alongside a lot of people if after like year 5 they're not ever willing to spend any money. But I think that when you look at, they want to be a team that builds through young players who you then can cash in on, who you then can turn that money into more young players and transfer moves right out of the gate. But I do think this ownership group put up a ton of money right out of the gate. And yeah, I think that means they're probably going to be frugal for the first couple of years. That doesn't mean they're cheap. I think there's 2 different conversations about somebody who's cheap and somebody who's frugal. We can get to a point where after 3 years of 100% sold out seasons, after 3 years of being able to sell players, after 3 to 5 years of those factors, now we can start having a conversation. Also, I want to throw out, I know it's not a big financial factor, but everyone keeps telling me how much it costs to run these youth systems, and that's why we have to charge parents so much. And yet City doesn't charge parents a dime, and they're running a pretty robust youth system. I'm not saying it costs a ton. I'm not saying it costs millions. I'm saying it does cost some money. And that's the team you want to be. And all they're doing is adding more and more youth teams. I don't think they're cheap. I think that's too far of a stretch. They're not spending the bucks. I can't argue with that. But I don't think the ownership's cheap. And that's just my thought about that.
I agree with that sentiment for the most part. On this wonderful comment from our good buddy Chat City Tactics, did Will get some new headphones? I can confirm that I went out of my way just for you, Chat City Tactics, and I bought some cheap garbage earbuds at CVS because I, for the life of me, could not find the earbuds that
your tactical headphones were very annoying to Chat City Tactics.
You want me to put them on?
No, keep the tactical headphones away. Edwin, City just doesn't have depth. Our injuries are very impactful. And that's another thing today. We're talking about, Olaf did say, and you can disagree with this statement all you want, but this is Olaf, probably the game we've created the most. couple of games this season, we haven't created enough. Today, we created enough. That's something we look at first, and then scoring from there. And so when you think about all the different changes they had, it kind of forced them to go to a more offensive lineup. Alfredo Morales was in there. Hartle was moved back from his usual attacking role to essentially Edward Leuven's role. Connor Valum, who's usually a defender, was moved up a little bit. So, I mean, there was a lot of changes in the lineup. And it did. I know people are hate to hear this because they lost 2-0 and didn't score a goal. But it was, based on the runs they were going on, it was, I thought, the most creative game they had. Not a high bar to clear, but clearly Olof thought the same.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I'm trying to pull up the XG number here on.
It's not great. It's 0.93 or something like that.
Yeah, but honestly, when you look at, they're probably going to give a low rating to Akil Watts as basically a sitter.
SofaScore,
so much heat.
SofaScore has it at 0.85 with KC's at 1.16. Just
for me, I just don't have a huge problem with that. I think this
not a great number, but it's just
not.
I test this one.
For me, St. Louis City SC have tonight put on their most dynamic attacking performance of the season. And people will talk about the Galaxy match because they scored 3 goals, or they might talk about the Seattle match just because we won. The Seattle match was not a very great match in terms of offensive production. Of course, it's awesome when you can win a match at home off a Leuven beautiful set piece, but and the Galaxy match was a lot of transitional play. Galaxy gave St. Louis a lot in that match. St. Louis didn't really earn a lot of that. Tonight, St. Louis earned good chances, didn't finish them. Earned good opportunities, didn't create good shots on other opportunities as well. So, and I also want to talk about the depth comments just a little bit. I actually think this is the deepest St. Louis City SC roster we've ever seen. Injuries are very impactful. That's very true. But this is definitely the deepest St. Louis City SC roster we've ever seen, where the entire bench is, I'm fairly confident in them playing a match should they be called to the test, in the way that Josh Yarrow has been, Tomas Ustrak did come in and do that tonight. And we've just got good guys on the bench. When 2 of your bench options in a decent attacking lineup are Betcher and Teuscher, like something's going decently well in your depth. And that's with injuries. So, I think this is the deepest roster that St. Louis City's ever had. At the end of the day, we can talk on and on about composition and roster and all this, but, you got to score goals. St. Louis City, I don't care who's on the pitch. If putting Timo Baumgartel at striker is going to lead to 8 goals a match, then I'm putting him at striker 8 times. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
I don't think it is. We got a comment here on Twitter. The way you play this is Alex Boyer. Is quoting Lutz with this one, quote unquote, the way you want to play football is attacking minded, high pressing, aggressive, a very modern approach to football, which will be very fast and exciting. He's quoting Lutz. I'm guessing that's probably from an interview in 2023. This is Alex Boyer's comment. This team shows none of this. Maybe time to avoid the sunk cost fallacy and move on. The point of the sunk cost fallacy is that you know all the variables, which is never mind. I'm not gonna get into that part. I think he's alluding to firing Olof, which is just it's ridiculous. He's completely solved the defense for the most part. Obviously, letting up 2 goals and them falling apart is bad. But I mean, the structure of the defense that everyone complained about for 2 years has been solidified, except for when they get
the best in MLS.
Just when they get caught ball watching for 30 seconds of every freaking game, and that's when they decide to completely lose everything. But the defense has been solidified for the most part. And again, another complaint, I'm going back and forth with somebody on X about this one, because the complaint again is people are like, why are Leuven and Hartle playing in the back? 2 years, people complained about the lack of buildup. And again, now we fixed the buildup, and that's one of the reasons. And now people are complaining about, well, you don't have your attacking players on the front foot enough, which I'm not saying it's a completely ridiculous statement, but again, you can't have it both ways, everyone. And so I'm not saying these are the same people. Maybe these are the same people who weren't complaining about playing fast-paced attacking soccer that was getting you bit on the back end. Maybe I'm being unfair here. But overall, I'm not wrong with saying that was the issue with a lot of the fan base. They solved that problem, and now the fan base is now shifted wildly to the other end without any, I think, nuance of what has happened with the defense and what has happened with the buildup in the offense. Because the numbers aren't great. And this is a lot of eye test. But you watch the last 2 games, and if you just stopped every possession before City's offense hits the opponent's box, you're like, wow, this team actually moves the ball pretty well. Because they just blow it as soon as they get into the final third into the box. And tonight, the exact same thing. Even Celia, who I was pumping up all game, every time he got the ball actually in the box, for the most part, he kind of screwed it up and misplayed the ball and didn't make the incisive pass. And, other than Connor Valum getting that cross across the face that Watts completely miffed, there's nothing decisive and incisive and nothing final and nothing well hit in the box. And that's the biggest issue. But how is that Olof Mellberg's problem? I mean, it's his problem, but why? How is it his fault? How is that his fault? It would be my question for all of these people.
He's put the players in this match, especially in a position to get those chances created and score goals. We've seen it. Even Ustrak was whipping balls in the box. We've seen Wallum, Klauss, even Betcher once or twice had a couple opportunities tonight where there were plenty of chances to create in the box, and the quality just wasn't there in the box. And that's not on Mellberg at that
point. No, not at all. Let's get through some of these comments here because you're doing a great job here joining us on the Sports Hub STL post game here on Sports Hub STL. That's why we call it that. And of course, we're brought here by Hot Shots. St. Louis is home for all the games all the time since 1990. You can find yours at hotshots.net. I shouldn't be covering their logo while I'm talking about them. Home of St. Louis sports fans since 1990. Check them out. It's great if you go there. I always like to get the nachos. I get double pico de gallo. That's the best way to get the Hot Shots nachos, but best way to watch all the games. In fact, right now, home game or away game, if you don't have tickets to the home games, how are you not at a Hot Shots to watch the Blues keep going for another game? It's where I'm going to be for every playoff game because I'm going to let you guys on a little insight here. I have a very wonderful girlfriend who is very talented, hence why she has stuff from Creighton because she played a sport there. And I don't criticize the athlete's effort because I'm not an athlete, who has Blues tickets. And I'm not allowed at Blues games anymore this year because I was 0 for 7 in the first half of the season. So I'm not allowed at Blues games anymore. I can only watch them. And where do I watch them? Hot Shots. And so thank you, Hot Shots, for giving me the best place in St. Louis to watch this entire playoff run because it's going to be magical. And I will be every single playoff game, home or away, at Hot Shots because, again, I cannot go to home games this season. Also, we're brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Let's get to some of these comments here. Creighton Turner, roster is deep, but we lack speed. If we're going to sit back in a low block, we have to have speed. And that's why Celio Pompeu is such a game changer. And that's why, and Olof Mellberg acknowledged exactly that, Creighton. And to Creighton's point, I think what Creighton's getting at, if you're going to sit in that low block, you have to have a counterattacking squad, and you have to have speed on a counterattack. I will disagree with him. I think calling this system a low block is oversimplifying it. I think you would agree with that, Will.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a mid block at worst because Pompeyu's taking off and pressing pretty high. You have Klauss doing what he does. I would call it a mid block, and I would say that they use a situational high press.
Yes, that's the big thing for me. It will look like a low block a lot of the time, especially when City are going to be comfortable not having the ball. But we see a lot of opportunities where Klauss or Betcher, whoever's the target 9, is really initiating a strong press, and they're choosing those battles very specifically. There's certain triggers. They really like to start that press when the ball goes out to the wing backs when the opponent's got a 4-back. And it's been decently effective at forcing turnovers. So I wouldn't say it's a complete low block. And I would also say on the speed thing, this is why I was rubbing my hands together when you were reading this comment, is St. Louis City SC have switched to the U22 model, right? There's a senior roster slot that's open and 2 U22 slots open. There's also a supplemental roster slot open. City are sitting on a ton of money in terms of GAM that they can trade around the league, get a U22 contract or some sort of international transfer.
By the way, to your point, the earlier conversation, if they don't utilize that and how they utilize that are 100% criticizable things from the fan base. Those are tangible, criticizable things. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yes, absolutely. And So it's now up to between now and April 23rd. I think we're going to see an addition to this roster without a doubt. I'm not really sure if we'll see a trade, a player exiting, given injuries and all that kind of nonsense. But I think St. Louis City SC are going to see another young, fast kid, kind of like Conrad Vaughn. Look at the things that he's done for the St. Louis City SC roster. I mean, he's, in my opinion, been the best player on the team through 7 matches.
I mean, Conrad Vaughn was incredible tonight. I mean, that was the coming out party.
Oh yeah. No, honestly, I think we've seen him do it all 7 for the most part. I think he's been great.
Yep. E-Bill comes in and says, Klauss needs to be more of a target man, not creator. Something needs to change soon. D is solid, but offensively finishing, I'm hopeful for the changes after tonight. Chances were there. Okay. I understand I understand the thought process, but Will, what was the best chance that City had to win this game tonight?
Joao Klauss with being the target man and being a creator with a back heel kind of pass into volume into space. And that's kind of what the target man does. It's not like
I think you're thinking of a target man, E-Bill, and more of a poaching mentality, which I think is a fair way to think about a target man. You're thinking, I want him there, center 9, pressing the line and being the target man for all our crosses.
He's thinking Zlatan Ibrahimovic is what he's thinking.
We're seeing it more as a hold-up target man, which is win the ball, and then when you have runners, play it off them, and then follow them from there. So
exactly,
we're agreeing and disagreeing at the same time, E-Bill, because that was the most dangerous part of this game. And oh my God, Duke lost.
What?
Houston?
No way.
Back?
No way. What was the score?
No way. They won. Sorry, my apologies, all soccer fans, but that just flashed across because I turned it off a minute ago because it was bothering me, and I didn't think they were going to close it out, and they actually did. Holy crap, that's amazing.
42-point second half.
That's wild.
For Houston.
Daniel Guevara, yes, but you have to score. If you don't score, you're not going to win. You can't draw every match. We just lost to the worst club in MLS. We haven't scored in 270 minutes now. Yeah, I don't think anyone's saying that's not good enough, but literally everything was said today by them that it wasn't good enough. That doesn't change that it was the best one we saw, and it doesn't change the fact that the game plan was solid. And so people who want to blame Klauss, people who want to blame Lutz, or people who want to play Olof, people who want to blame Lutz. I just don't think that was the issue. The game plan worked. Putting Klauss back in and letting him run with Pompeu, it worked. The players didn't execute, and that is a huge problem. But that problem isn't as easy to solve as just firing the coach. And I think that's why we always get to it. You can't fire the team. You can fire the coach. And so I think that's why people want to complain and want to go to that. No one's saying that it's okay that they haven't scored yet, but pointing out the facts of them attacking well and then saying, but they completely screwed the game over in the final third, that pretty much covers that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to score goals. Like we've had this conversation a million times.
The only way you get
Olof
3 points.
Mellberg is
the only
not
way you get
shooting
3
the ball
points.
into the net. It is up to the players that he puts on the pitch his job is to put them in a good position to succeed. I think tonight he put them in a great position to succeed, and the players did not put the ball into the back of the net, and they did not keep the ball out of the back of their own net. That is not a Lutz or an Olof problem. That's not a team composition problem. That wasn't a lineup problem tonight. For me, this was just the opposite of last game, where I went on X and I said, for me, this was a managerial disaster class. And I thought it was. Tonight, I think this was a managerial masterclass, and the players failed to execute. So if those two things can come together in the same match for St. Louis City SC, we're going to see this team really blow things open. But if we see another match or two where it doesn't come together, we could see a downward spiral that could be almost irrecoverable. And that's a conversation that we'll have to start having if we lose next weekend.
Daniel Guevara Edwin. And I want to throw up, this is the quote from Josh Yarrow talking about the accountability on the players.
That's my favorite coaches. One of the night.
Edwin, we were so terrible in defense from game 7 of 2023. Olaf fixed that in a few months. I'll wait on the offense. And listen, I would say if you don't have an STL Today subscription, get one, because Tom Timmerman in the post-game presser today was asking very pointed questions about this offense was scoring at the end of last season. Why are they not now? And so I imagine Tom's going to have a pretty good angle on the offensive struggles factor. So if you don't already read Tom Timmerman, he's fantastic at his job. I have no problem pumping his tires. And I have a feeling his article tomorrow morning or late tonight, if you have the internet, which you're watching us, so you do, you can jump in there. See, San Diego FC is up 3-0 versus Seattle. I think Daniel's forgetting that City SC also won a bunch of games in their first season, and apparently it doesn't mean shit. It doesn't matter 2 years later. Like it didn't build a lot of goodwill apparently, and oh well. E-Bill, I was thinking more of a poaching role. Klauss worked his absolute tail off tonight. He arguably was one of our best, if not our best, on the pitch.
That's a little bold. I wouldn't say he was the best on the pitch. I definitely wouldn't say he was the worst. And I agree, he did work his absolute tail off. You know, I mean, we can talk on and on and on about it, but you know, he put the players around him in a position to succeed as a target 9. He was able to bring the ball down and be that target guy. He had a couple of moments that really pissed me off where he was not the most successful and strong on the ball like we've seen him be in most of his career, but you know, 9 times out of 10 tonight, he was doing what he needed to do. And so I agree. He was definitely in good form tonight. I would have liked to see us maybe get a little more action, especially once Betcher came onto the pitch, of whipping balls into the box. I mean, we had Ustrak and Hartle and even Pompeo when he was on the pitch, and Vollum getting opportunities wide to get crosses in. And I was thinking, you know, if we have Klauss and Betcher in the box, you know, we're going to score some goals. And the few times that we were whipping in crosses, I was seeing for St. Louis City SC just one guy in the box, and it was Klauss in a 1v3, similar to how we complained about Betcher having the same issue previously. And tonight, for me, it wasn't necessarily a lineup thing. I think just the pieces of the puzzle, they weren't clicking together the right way.
Again, the fact that he's the DP is unchangeable. So it can't keep affecting your baseline. If your thing is that he's a DP striker, so he has to score, you're just going to talk yourself into a hole the entire season. Because even if he's affecting the team, even if he does start scoring, he's not going to score at the rate you want him to. And so again, they're probably not going to pick up his option. And so thank God we're not going to have this conversation anymore. Yeah, he's in a contract year. You don't think yes, he knows that. That's why he's white knuckling everything.
Frustrated. Yeah.
That's why he's white knuckling everything. That's why he's struggling. But at the same time, while he's struggling, he's winning the ball out wide on the right and creating attacks. He's again playing that hold up play. And even though he's not scoring, he still drags defenders out of position. This is why, dear sweet mother of God, do I have to do this all over again? I did this like 15 minutes ago. You are a better team with him on the pitch, and you weren't able to trade him or buy him down. And so therefore, why do you care that he's the DP until December when he won't be the DP anymore unless he plays well enough to still be the DP? But they are better with him on the pitch than without him. And so just releasing him wouldn't have made them better. And I don't believe that the player they would have replaced his contract with would have been that much of a difference maker. You can argue at that point. That's fair enough.
Give me Josh
Apparently
Sargent.
They don't spend the money anyway, so maybe they wouldn't have gotten anybody anyway. I don't know. I'm just annoyed by that one. Sometimes players, he's making an impact. I'm sorry. E-Bill, the shoulder foul the ref called in the 73rd was atrocious, though. Same the game from 420 last season when Celio scored. Are you saying? Yeah, you're saying that the call,
I posted about that on X.
The call, the call from the official was atrocious, or the play from Celio. I will say, while we are talking about players that I'm not going to really defend as much anymore. I did sell all of my Akil Watts and Kyle Hebert stock at about the 80th minute of the game because they're solid players. I think that Watts is this kind of like goes into my Indy Vassilev theory. I think Watts is one of those guys who's a better interior player than he is a wide player, actually. And I think Watts is a better center midi. That's why I think he's been a center midi his entire career for the most part. He's a fine, serviceable backup fullback. But I think when he's got to do so much offensive, heft as a wingback in this system, I think he gets exposed at times. And I think Kyle Hebert's a really solid player. And I think he's a great player for this system. But he simply makes a mistake every game. And the last 2 games, that mistake has led to 2 goals. He gets caught ball watching against Philly, and today he bites. He steps up onto a player he probably didn't need to, and lets open a wide space. And we also have to say Lunt probably should have saved that one on that first one from Joveljic based on XG and goals created. I think he was minus 0.67 at that point of the game for Lunt. So you can criticize a lot of things there, but I understand why people want to see Baumgartel maybe for that reason, because again, Hebert solid overall at times, but he does keep making that one mistake at the worst time. And right now that has cost this team, and that's been rough.
Yeah. Hebert is amazing at getting his body in shooting lanes and just causing problems for the attack of the opponents. He struggles with his feet a lot of the time, leads to a lot of bad giveaways here and there. We're seeing, 1 or 2 per game. And then, like you said, 2 really costly mistakes that have directly led to 2 of the 4 goals conceded all season by City, and directly led to, 2 losses. It's tough for Kyle Hebert, but you have to appreciate the work that he has done and being part of what has been so far the best defense in MLS. So it's hard for me to criticize him too much, but we have to be obviously conscious of the limitations that he does have, just like any other player.
Yeah, and I think that's also fair. And another point that I'm running into that I've seen a lot of, and we haven't got any of that on the chat today, but I'm getting it a bunch in the Twitters. People are they're bothered by Hartl playing in Leuven's role, and they're bothered that Leuven continues to play in that role. I've been getting this a lot from people wanting to play Leuven higher, and they're bothered by Hartel playing so far back while they're having offensive struggles. I thought Hartel was incredible tonight. I thought it was one of his best days in the Olof Mellberg system. I do think it's interesting. Taylor did delete this tweet, but I am going to keep running with it because he tweeted it, and I have it in my brain. And I asked him, like, why do you think Hartel? Because he tweeted and he responded, and I asked, why do you think Hartel's struggling? And he's like, he essentially made some comment along the lines of like, Hartel's a system player, and when you put him in a system like this is what you're going to get from him. Basically saying you put him in a back-footed system, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, defensive system, you're going to get a player who can't speak through their offense. And yet tonight you moved him further away from goal, and I thought he spoke through his offense one of the most dynamic games, most dynamic ways of the entire season. I mean, he was everywhere. He was second on the team in touches with 77 behind Henry Kessler. He was dynamic in passes. He had 2 key passes. He was only him and Celio Pompeu were the only players who had multiple key passes. By the way, Celio Pompeu did his 2 key passes in 20 touches. Probably need more than 20 touches for Celio Pompeu. That's something we need to get into maybe later. But anyway, Marcel Hartel, 77 touches, 2 key passes. He was dynamic in a lot of ways. And just, I mean, if you can't go back and watch those moments on the left side where he dropped back. I mean, people are complaining about how he's playing. He dropped back to left wing back, and that interplay with Pompeu and Valum and Morales getting involved. I mean, we haven't seen that kind of interplay on the left side since really, like, even maybe before Hackworth, when they became a much more direct team in a lot of ways. That left side interplay, we just haven't seen that over the last year, and I love seeing it again. I'm unfortunately, it comes with this weird thing that City will always apparently suck down the right side and be fantastic down the left side with 3 years running now. But I like that we're getting this left side attack back. That was fantastic. And Hartel's ability to step back so that Wallem can step up and then step up. And then when Wallem would step back, that was fantastic. And it was one of the reasons why they dominated most of the first half. And so I understand that the natural idea is I want my attacking players closer to the goal. But in these 2 situations, one, Leuven has routinely said he likes this more. And I know it's a more defensive situation. It's more defensive and even deeper than we saw last year, but still, that's what he says he likes, is going back, getting the ball, and then having the field in front of him. And so you know that Leuven likes that more. And now we've seen that Hartl, even though he doesn't like it more, even though it's not what we've seen from him, we see that he can be very effective, and the system can be very effective with him doing that. Why do you want different? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think Leuven needs to be playing where he wants to play. You got to put your best players in their most comfortable positions. Throwing Leuven up at a 10 is not going to do anything for St. Louis City SC except piss Edward Leuven off and make him not play as well. So I think tonight was, in my opinion, and listen, I preached all preseason and in the offseason about how this roster and this coach and this system, the name of the game is going to be Fluidity. And I think tonight was the best example we've seen of just dynamic fluidity in the lineup, players shifting around in the middle of the match, creating opportunities, lots of movement on the pitch. It was very difficult for Sporting KC to deal with that. St. Louis just got to put some of those early chances away. I think had Volum's initial great opportunity not gone off the post and had gone into the net, we would probably be having a much different conversation right now and probably a much happier one, because I think St. Louis would have blown that match wide open. So for me, the absolute worst case scenario is you lose 0-2 on the road to your rivals, right? Against what is the worst team in the league at the time. But for me, this was one of City's best matches of the season thus far. And I know that's going to really shock everyone to hear me say that, but
let's add the correct caveat. They were still completely useless in the final third.
I wouldn't say completely useless. I would say that they were completely useless at finishing. We saw Akil Watts have basically 2 tap-ins that he missed. We saw Volum hit the post. We saw Klauss get a really good opportunity in the air. We saw Sailor cut into the box and have a perfect chance to shoot and decide to try and beat another guy for some reason when he could have scored. That could have been 5-0 before SKC ever had a good opportunity on goal. I mean, think about it. I know that sounds ridiculous, but if those opportunities, if you have the quality and you're making those good opportunities in the final third and you're progressing well and your backline's doing their job and keeping you at 0-0, you got to be scoring some goals at some point on some of these great opportunities. So, for me, I really, truly think it was the best attacking game in terms of just being dynamic and creating good, repeatable scoring chances. This is our best game of the season. But
that's a
frustrating
season. Great phrase. Repeatable. I think it is a great phrase. And it's not, I think the buildup was probably some of the best. I know Kansas City's a bad team, but because that's only going to be probably their 4th most shots against the team. And I think how many they put on goal? They put
2 besides the
goals? They put 4 on target.
So
they put 4 on target. It's going to be one of their highest shots on target counts of the season. It's still not good enough. And that's the bottom line, because you put more shots on, you put more quality shots on, you will score more goals. And so the issue though is that that one Celio opportunity where he dribbles it far in and eventually ends up in the goalie's hands. That's not a shot opportunity. Volum's through ball to Klauss. That's just a tad bit too far in front of him. That's not a shot opportunity that could have been quality. A really annoying one is when I can't remember who. I think it might have been Alfredo tries to push one out to Watts, and if it's just a little bit further, Alfredo pushes one outside to Volum, and if it's just a little bit wider, Volum runs on it perfectly and probably has another cross to Klauss or somebody. So there was a lot of great buildup there, but none of that's going to matter if they can't finish, and that's a lot of the fans' points, and I can't harp them for that. You're losing ground. There's only so many matches. You're dropping points. You're not even getting draws at this point. They're going to have to string together some wins and some streaks of 3. So I understand why fans are bothered, but this is just a lot different from the Philadelphia game or the San Diego game, where you just get completely walked over, and it's hard to see what the vision was going forward. I liked what the vision was from what we saw from City today. Parts of the lineup are still holding them back. That's why we talked about a lack of Hebert and Watts. I have somebody commenting on Twitter about how they lack fullback depth or wingback depth, and they expect a lot from their wingbacks, and that's been a problem so far. And it didn't seem to be a problem until you again lost a wingback. And so that's a good point. They don't have a lot of depth there, but you lost Tots and you lost Hannes Horn, and you haven't had Jay Reed. And so we talked about this. This might have been one of our very first episodes, Will. Because I know Pep Guardiola has talked about this with City this year. You can't sign a 7th center back. with the expectation that 3 center backs are going to get hurt. Because if those 3 center backs don't get hurt, you spent money on nothing, a guy who never is going to play. And so to have Jay Reed, Connor Vollum, Thomas Totland, a guy like Akil Watts who can play both spots, a Hannes Horn who can play fullback, and a guy like Joey Zielinski on your lineup. And I know Chat City Tactics is saying, well, if he's in your roster, why isn't he getting time today? So we're talking about 5 bodies across those 2 spots. I don't think you can really completely harp on them for the depth there, because going out and getting another player in addition to Wallum after the Jay Reed injury probably would have left you with too much and would have taken up minutes from a guy like Jay Reed, who I think when he is healthy needs to get minutes, because he might be he might be the player more so than almost anyone else in this entire team who is most built to improve in this system.
And the awesome thing about Jay Reed too, I can get all into the tactics about this because I'm really excited for him to come back. And by the way, that should not be far away. He's not wearing any kind of a boot or anything on anymore, and he hasn't been for like a week or 2. It's mostly just physical therapy, I would imagine at this point. That's speculative. I don't have a confirmation on that, but he cannot be far out. His original timeline had him projected at the like 1st or 2nd week of April, so that's right where we're at. I don't think he'll be out for long, but he's made for this system, and that allows Conrad Vollum to go to right wing back and solve the problem there, right? Or when Totland comes back, then you've got Vollum on the left, Totland on the right, and you have Jay Reed off the bench at the left or something like that. And you can even move Vollum up in that situation when you put Jay Reed in off the bench. And all of a sudden you have a lot of options that sound really appetizing towards getting forward on the pitch and scoring goals, right? So for me, Jay Reed, as weird as it may seem, could end up in the end here being almost a key to the success of this roster when he comes back into the squad here. So I'm really excited to see him get back on the pitch. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think he's going to be just absolutely fantastic, and I really cannot wait. And you know what's one way to make watching the games a little bit more fun is playing with DraftKings. Obviously, DraftKings, the crown is yours, powering our post-game show right here on Sports Hub STL, here on the City Hub post-game show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Promo code STL Sports. Where do you want to use it? That is the DraftKings Pick 6 app. We're having fun on this every morning on the Randy Carricker Show. It's been a blast the last few days as we're trying to pick our Pick 6. What is the Pick 6? Well, right here in Missouri, again, right now in Missouri, you can play the Pick 6 on the DraftKings app. The best thing you're going to do, you're going to jump on the Pick 6 and you're just going to pick more or less on your different picks. Right now, I think you can go with find somebody who uses a torpedo bat and pick more on any of their picks. That's usually a smart way to go with things. Just find somebody with a torpedo bat and roll with that thing. You're ready to win real money in April. Struggling to choose which team to pull off the upset? Forget about the teams. All you need to do is just focus on player stats and rack up big cash prizes with DraftKings Pick 6. When it comes to massive payouts, DraftKings gets all over the competition. They dunked all over the competition, just like Houston did against Duke tonight, which surprised me. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. You can track your picks for a shot to win huge cash prizes. It's as simple as that. I love playing it just because you got the live options. You can go before. You can get baseball. You can get basketball. You can get hockey in there. Right now, a Blues player like Robert Thomas, more on their points or more on their shots if it's Jordan Kyrou. It's usually a good play on your Pick 6 as well. You can turn your college basketball knowledge as we have the final going on. Turn that into cash today. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly with a $5 entry. Just make sure you're using promo code STL Sports. Again, that's promo code STL Sports.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
In fact, next week I might have to take a little peek at the offerings they have for St. Louis City, because if there's whatever it is, I'm just going to take less. Whatever, except for maybe like saves for Ben Lund. I'm just taking less across the board for City.
Speaking of taking less, Eric Sontag with Domesticated Gamblers here at Sports Hub STL did finally land his first bet on St. Louis City SC, in which he predicted the under 3.5 goals and also St. Louis City SC to lose. And unfortunately, both of those things came true. And so shout out to Eric for that. If you aren't tuning into those, before all major St. Louis sports matches, Cardinals, Blues, St. Louis City, he's putting his picks. So if you want help on your DraftKings picks, definitely make sure to check his out on the website. That is sportshubstl.com. Check out Eric Sontag's picks there. For me, I had a lean in this one, and honestly, I thought City would have had the edge here. And like I said earlier, had that first Conrad Vollum shot banked off the post and gone in, I think City blows that game open, and it's a different conversation.
GB got here on the Twitter, usually get on our chat. Rock, they just aren't a good team. I'm not sure what the answer is. They aren't even an entertaining team right now. That was a pretty entertaining game. I'll disagree with you on that first one. I can't disagree with you on the second one. They are a very mediocre team right now. That's the definition of where they sit. They are the definition of mediocre after this game. And so, yeah, I can't really argue with you on that one. I do think that they're a palatable fun team to watch. I thought tonight was more fun than a couple of games. Again, Philadelphia and San Diego were a travesty. I never want to watch those games again. But I thought tonight was actually a pretty fun game. We did this a lot last year. People hate talking about positives in a draw or a loss, and that's the case here. And I think the fact is that we have Philadelphia and San Diego. We know what it looks like when this team doesn't have a plan. We know what it looks like now when this team can't do anything. We know what it looks like when this team looks like there should be no reason for hope. And this just isn't one of those games. And I guess that's why we might seem a little bit overly positive. It was a bad game. I mean, again, I'm not sure what was going through everyone's heads. I mean, again, Akil Watts, you can't just run through players. Yeah, I mean, you're going to get called every time. I don't know how he didn't get red carded at some point in that game. That was a weird one. Again, the defense, what are you doing just watching it the second time? Why does everyone forget how to play with the ball for the most part in the box? What is Akil doing when it comes to the ball at his feet? There's a lot of things to get very angry about in this game. I think you can even get really harsh and criticize Ben Lund for allowing that first goal. I don't think that's completely unfair when you look at some of the numbers attached to it. Not saying it was a good game, but I got this going on X as well. It was a better game than what we've seen, and so I have some faith in the process. That's where I'm at right now. I have more faith in the offensive game plan than I did in previous games. I still have a lot of questions on the ability for this team to execute it, but I am giving some of them the benefit of the doubt because we do have a lot of evidence. We know what Hartl can do. He had a good game. Klauss had a good game, even though he still got the monkey on his back. Pompei was dynamic. Wallem was dynamic. Morales was really solid. We haven't really talked about him, but Alfredo Morales, for the first time, really was an extremely solid player. He made some big plays, some big passes. The Nielsen thing sucks. Henry Kessler was really good. Again, Josh Yaro was solid. So, yeah, there are plenty of negatives.
Game.
There are plenty of negatives to focus on. But I can't sit up here and just completely crap on everything when there's 30 games left, 29 games left in the season, or 28 games left in the season, and there's a lot of promise, in my opinion, left. And it seems like a lot of people are turning on that and going negative right off the bat, but for some reason I'm not. And again, maybe that's because I grew up a Rams fan and everything seems better than that. I'm not sure. I got to look.
Anybody who has followed my content on Instagram, STL City SC views, knows I'm the first person to immediately criticize. I'm always going to be 100% real with it, and I'm going to be the first person to openly criticize the team. But for me, this is just one of those matches where, like Rock just said, as horrible as the result is, there is really a lot of positive to take away from it, and it's a match that I really have a hard time complaining too much about in terms of what this means for the future, besides the fact that I really just did not like the energy and the body language of the players starting around like the 60th minute. But, that's something that can easily be fixed with a few sprints in training. And, good coaches know how to handle those types of things. So, that doesn't concern me too terribly much until it becomes a theme. But in terms of tactics, I think this was Mellberg's best managed match of the season. And I really think the players, were put in a position to succeed. Like, I've reiterated numerous times in this City Hub post-game show tonight, brought to you by Hot Shots. And so at the end of the day, you got to sleep this one off, and you got to look forward towards next week, where City have a really big matchup hosting the Crew. Rock, what do you know about the Crew, and how are you feeling about that matchup looking forward into next week?
I mean, at this point, I can't base anything that I'm thinking about with City on what they're going to face, because they have faced the worst teams in this league. They faced some of the best teams in this league. And yet I have we've seen just complete radical differences in what we've seen from this team. So it's what we're going to see from City. What are they going to show up and bring? I don't care about what Columbus is going to do. I care about what this coaching staff is going to do preparing for them. What is the game plan going to be? Does it continue to build the faith that we're just talking about us having now? Does it continue to build the faith in the scheme going forward relative to this roster? And then does the roster build on it? So, I got to see more Celio Pompeu. 100% I got to see more Celio Pompeu. Mm-hmm. I want to see more João Klauss. I know some people are going to disagree with that. I want to see more João Klauss. I don't know if there's a better way right now without Giannis Horn, without Jay Reed still out, obviously, without Thomas Totland. I don't know if there's a way to play better on the wings through the wingbacks and continue to get what you were able to get from Wallum this entire game. I don't know if it works, but if you can figure it out, to your point, if you can figure out a way to get Wallum over on the left side so that you continue that work with Pompeu and Hartle, I would love that, but it's probably not going to happen because you probably need him over on the right side more than anything. So, but then again, who are you going to put on the left side if you put him over on the right side until Horn and Jay Reed are back? Other than Heber, which again, it just creates the same issues whether it's left or right. So you're still a little bit pinched by that, but I want to see more Wallum continuing, giving him chances to be dynamic, giving him chances to attack in the third, giving him those chances where Hartle fills for him at left wing back so he can get up high and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I just want to see the process continue because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the only part of the faith here being there's a process and there's a noticeable process, and can you build on that process? That's what we need to see. And I don't care who the opponent is. City has to do that on their own. And that process has to lead to goals. Else we're just spinning our wheels here. There does have to be some results at some point because it is a results-oriented business. But overarching, I need to see that process continue from those players. And if any of those things stutter, I'll be frustrated. What about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. What City is going to bring out that matters the most in any match, in any circumstance. I will say that any team coached by Wilfred Nancy is going to be a solid team. They're going to bring their best on the road to St. Louis, and it's going to be an interesting, storyline to see if Mellberg is able to, again, put the team in a position to succeed the way he did in Kansas tonight. And then if that happens, do the players execute? So, this might be a little bit of a bold take, but assuming the injury report stays about the same, I would be more than happy if Mellberg spat out the exact same roster next weekend against the Crew. Knowing what I know about that team and more so focusing on what I want to see out of St. Louis, because we want to see Celio, we want to see Klauss, the two players in Wallum, involved in the attack, the three who did the most in the attack in this match, which was our most dynamic, of the season. We want to see Hartle continue to get repetitions where he's comfortable and where he's having success. Tonight we saw a place where he was having success. Let's just run the whole thing back. Assuming the injury report is about the same. And Morales, like Edwin kind of said in the chat here, Morales was great tonight. I think it was his best match for sure since joining the club. I wonder what he looks like when we have 30% possession. I can't imagine that we have that versus Columbus. Yeah, Columbus, they're a little bit of a press team too. It might look pretty 50-50 against the Crew. So I think that Morales could actually have a really good and impactful game against the Crew. Just the way I, loosely looking a week ahead, see that match kind of playing out. It could probably turn out to be his most impactful match that we've seen so far. So that'll be a storyline to watch for sure.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to wrap it up here on the City Hub postgame. I know it was a bad game, but you guys brought your game tonight here on the postgame chat. Thank you so much for joining us here on the YouTube. Before you go, though, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell so that every time we go live, you are informed. A good way to know how we're going live, if you don't hit the bell, though, is if there's an event going on in St. Louis sports Hub STL is going to be covering it, and that's because we're powered right here by Hot Shots, home of St. Louis sports fans since 1990, and DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today on the show. Again, Will Bratton, thank you so much for joining us. You guys were incredible. We'll be back next week for another City Hub postgame. In the meantime, this week, stay tuned. We have the Randy Carricker Show every day during the week going live at 10 a.m. And again, every time there is a St. Louis sporting event, that means all those Cardinals games. Stay tuned to Sports Hub STL for that postgame. For Will Bratton, I'm Matthew Rocchio, and this has been the City Hub postgame powered by Hot Shot Sports Bar and Grill and DraftKings Sportsbook.